Welcome to Voices of the Learning Network. My name is Erin Donovan. I am your very excited host today. I am pleased and delighted to have Kathy Foy on the line. We're going to talk about something brand new to start our new year of the Voices of the Learning Network. We're going to talk about something a bit different, marketing up. So, Kathy, welcome to the podcast. My first question to you is, why learning?
Good question. Thank you for having me, Erin. Why learning? Wow. I suppose, I think like most people in our industry, unfortunately, I kind of accidentally moved into learning and development. You probably hear that a lot. And it's interesting. I did a kind of poll recently with some of our kind of L&D members, and that was probably the most popular answer. It's a shame, but it's not one of those things you're kind of introduced to when you're younger, you're at school or college or whatever. But I suppose, I went into it kind of a little bit accidentally, but as soon as I understood more about it, I realized actually it was such a lovely space to work in. People generally, your colleagues in that space, your peers, they all feel the same. They're passionate about developing people, and they're passionate about making an improvement for the organization, not just the individual. And I think that probably inspires me. I mean, the individual piece is brilliant, and I think on a personal note, it's very rewarding when you're in learning and development. To see individuals grow. But I think as you probably move through different levels of your career in L&D, you start to become really committed to how you can make the business more profitable, how you can make it move faster, how you can, just improve things generally. And you realize L&D's got a massive impact there. So yeah, that's probably why for me.
I love it. And I think, yes, I do agree. Most of our podcast guests have accidentally fallen into learning because we don't go to school unless we are educators to learn. And yet it's such a vibrant industry. And those of us who are here, we're excited to be here. Now, Kathy, most of our listeners are practitioners, they are designers, they are creative types. And oftentimes we get in this world where all we're doing is making. So I'm so glad we're taking a step to the side. Tell me a little bit more about this idea of marketing up.
So I've been passionate actually about marketing learning for years, and I suppose I hadn't actually given it a name. I just knew that it was important to engage learners. It was important to get people in the right mindset for learning. You want people to turn up. I'm going to just go old fashioned here and turn up to our classroom, and want to be there. You don't want someone saying, oh yeah, my manager sent me, or I had to be here, or someone just told me I needed to attend this course. That's the worst thing in the world when you're about to run a training session, because the first probably half of that session is just overcoming that mindset barrier and trying to convince them why they should be there. So I thought, well, actually, we need to do more work before people get to that point, before they're actually in that kind of more formal learning environment. And so I suppose I've always kind of wanted to know more about how we can improve that. I had the privilege probably about 12 or so years ago. I worked at Tesco, and actually I worked with our marketing director very closely for about 3 months. We were running a whole new project, and actually one of the pieces we wanted to do was educate the rest of learning and development in terms of user engagement. And so I actually worked with her, and she was fantastic. And what she exposed me to from a marketing perspective was just brilliant. And so I suppose since then, I've kind of taken that with me. And every time I've moved in to manage an L&D team, it's always been, okay, how do we look at engagement? How do we look at marketing? I've been lucky enough to have teams that have had, and I'd like to say it's me that kind of brought these people on board, but actually they were already enrolled when I got there. But I've worked in teams where I've had people that are solely responsible for ensuring the consistency of the learning and development brand. I've had people that are solely responsible for literally internal marketing of learning and engagement. That is their sole job in L&D, which is just brilliant. And so I suppose all of that learning to me has just made me realize over the years how important marketing learning is. And I think one of the big things, and this is where I think, L&D need to start if they're interested in this space, is looking at their L&D brand. What does your brand say about you? There's a brilliant quote by Jeff Bezos. It's years old now, but it says, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Well, I would say find out what people are saying about L&D, behind your back, in the nicest possible way. I'm sure they're saying great things, but you need to understand what they're saying. Do they see L&D in the same way that you see L&D?
So I'm an entrepreneur. I'm starting out. I want to build my business and I want to be more than just an extra set of hands. So, Kathy, how do I build my individual learning brand?
Yeah, that's a really good question as well. And I think something that a lot of learning and development professionals kind of move into at some point. I think you reach a certain point in your career and sometimes you kind of go, actually, I'm going to go external now rather than be internal. And actually, even if you stay internal, it's still so important to work on your personal brand because you need to get involved in the things that are happening in our industry. You need to be making sure you're invited to speak at, events. We've got some amazing events in our industry. We're so lucky. There's a number of events run by CIPD every year. The World of Learning have got 2 events. There's Learning Technologies. I mean, everywhere you look, there's a brilliant learning event that happens. And that's just the UK. There are amazing events happening all over the world. And I think actually, to kind of, if you think about your own profile and your own brand, you need to be kind of passionate about something and be consistent. So find something that you're passionate about, and it might even be you don't consider yourself an expert in that. It's fine. You'll learn as you go along. But if you're passionate about it and you share that passion and you're consistent with your messaging, that builds a really strong brand. And people think, oh, I'm going to go and see so and so because they know about X, Y, and Z, because that's what they always talk about. They blog about it. They write about it. They've been sharing videos. They've been creating free tools for people. That I see they've been invited to speak at World of Learning or wherever it is. And that slowly kind of builds your brand. And I think that's relevant whether you're internal or external, actually.
I love it. So, what came up to me while I was, first of all, I now have 9 things to do today for my own personal brand. So, thanks for that, Kathy. Appreciate. Um, how does branding help the learner?
Yeah. I think so. I think there's a few things. I think that if you think about your L&D brand, it's kind of it's your promise to people. Well, that's one way of looking at it. It's your promise. So it's kind of saying, this is what you can expect from us. And this is why that consistency piece is really key. So from a learner's perspective, they can rely on you. They can rely on learning and development to give them a great experience. Once you've got a really strong and consistent brand in place, then you're going to create some brilliant customer or employee loyalty. And once you've created that loyalty, and there's different types of loyalty here. One could be convenience loyalty, like, you've got I don't know, a Tesco supermarket around the corner from you, but one could be emotional loyalty. And we know actually that people will go out of their way to visit a different supermarket, like say Waitrose, because actually they manage to do something with their customers that creates this incredible emotional loyalty where people will drive 20 minutes to get to a Waitrose, even if a Tesco's on their doorstep. And actually that's what, if you think of trying to get learning and development in that place, then for the learner, for them to know they have this trusted brand, this trusted team that they can go to, that they can rely on to help them with their own development and growth in that organization, then I mean, I think that's kind of priceless. And I think for the learner, it helps them connect, why learning is relevant for them, why learning is relevant for the organization, why they're doing it in the first place, to be honest.
So, there are 2 words that keep coming up: relevancy and consistency. So, I can see on the business's perspective, this is how we are relevant. This is how we become consistent. If you're a learning and development practitioner, how do you do it? It's not just using the same tools, but give us some tips for remaining either or relevant and consistent.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think the one thing you can do, and there's a lot I would actually recommend probably doing before you get to this point, and which is certainly around doing a bit of an internal review to find out what your current brand is and how people see you. But there are ways that you can do that. But I would certainly be like, ask questions, find out, get a view of how other people see you. But I think remaining relevant and consistent, probably what helps with both of these is going through something or building what's called a brand framework. So, and here you kind of ask yourself like 5 questions, and I would do this as a team. So if you're listening and you've got a number of people, colleagues in your L&D team, this is a great thing to do as a group, because really you need to be all aligned in learning and development. You can't have someone thinking we stand for this and someone else thinking, no, we stand for this. So the first question is to ask yourself, who are you? And that's really, it might be that it could be just something really straightforward with the L&D team, but actually it probably isn't. It's probably more than that. It's probably, I don't know, we're a global learning and development function. And actually we call ourselves whatever. Expedia have a brilliant name. They actually call their learning and development team the GLOW team, which stands for Global Learning Organization. And it's so lovely as well. I mean, you know, not many of us are going to get that acronym, but it's really nice and it's really well known across their organization. You then ask yourself, what's your purpose? So, and that's something you definitely need to agree on as a group. So you know, why are you doing what you do? Or really, yeah, what is our purpose? So what is what is our purpose for being? What is our purpose in the organization? Then you want to say, you know, why do we do it? Maybe it's because we want to improve efficiency in the sales arm of the organization. It could be anything. And then you want to make sure you define who it's for. So who is your audience? Because for a lot of L&D teams, they've got complex structures. And particularly if you're in a global organization, you might have several L&D functions. So be really, really clear on who your audience is, because that also helps you rule out who your audience isn't. And I think that's quite crucial when you're coming to messaging and engagement and things like that. And then lastly, think about your brand promise. So as I was saying at the beginning, your brand is kind of your promise. It's what you're telling people they can expect from you. So I think to agree a really strong brand promise with your team, and then actually once you've got that brand framework, that's almost like your guiding star. It's like everything you can go back to, which makes sure that everything you're doing is consistent. You know, and it's relevant as well because you have a purpose, you know why you're doing it, and you know who you're doing it for.
I love it. So I'm going to pick your brain. What's your brand promise?
Well,
Did I put you on the spot?
yeah. Our brand promise is to help elevate senior learning and development professionals so that they have a voice at an executive level.
I love it. I love it.
What we do.
So, what was your best learning experience? It could be from the perspective of this was really well branded. I knew what I was getting. I was excited to go. Or it could be from the perspective of I thought this was going to be poop and I never knew it was going to be so amazing. So, as a learner, what was I just want to use the word glow in some way, and I know I can't artfully get it in. So, so Kathy, what made you glow as a learner?
Maybe glad as a learner. I think actually for me, it probably was many years ago actually having some training that was specifically for L&D practitioners. And the reason it made me glow, the reason it stays with me and it's really, really memorable, is because I don't think I'd ever learned so much ever in one kind of formal session. It was over a 2-day period. The guy that delivered it was his name's Paul Dunn. And he ended up being a bit of an unofficial mentor for me for about 2 years afterwards. He introduced me to the concept of neuroscience. He made models that I thought were seriously complex and confusing, and I didn't understand the relevance of them at all. And he made it so simple. And so everything in that, even from his engagement up front, you know, and the link that he made to the relevance in the training to your role and to the business and how you're helping to improve things. And I suppose that's probably the best training I've ever had, and I'll never forget it. It was incredibly memorable.
I love it. I love it. Um, so Kathy, we want to learn more from you, listen to you, follow you. Where can we do that? Where can we learn more about you, what you're doing, and hear your conversation as it progresses?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty vocal on there with my thoughts. So feel free to connect there. Also, I run a business called CLO 100. So yeah, can kind of contact me through that as well.
I love it. Last question of the day.
Hmm.
If you had a choice and you could start in learning, so if you knew what you knew now, would you go back? Would you start your whole career as a as a practitioner? So let me start that over. Okay. So Kathy, last question. Knowing what you know now, knowing that we all fell into learning, um, if you had a chance to go back and said, I am going to start out as a learner, start out as a learning professional, would you do it? Or do you think your background actually boosted you as a learning professional?
Hmm. So really, gosh, that's an interesting question. That's a hard question, actually. It should be easy. I think I would definitely stay within learning and development. I love the industry that I work in, and I think if I were to go back now, knowing what I know now,
Yeah.
then I think it would be great to go into it again, and I would go into it much more deliberately, feet first, entirely, and I would probably be less worried and consumed with what are lots of academics in our field think and say, and worrying that I'm not one of them, and actually really kind of promoting the fact that I'm a kind of test and learn person, and actually I like to experiment and I like to try, and I don't mind if I fail, and that's okay. But I think if I would know that now and go back and do it, then I think I'd be a much stronger force.
Well, the force be with all of you who are listening to this today. Perfect setup, Kathy. Thank you so much for joining us. I have 2 pages of notes as I usually do on these podcasts, but take this, market your brand, think about being consistent, intentional, and always resilient as you work forward. Thank you for joining us for Voices of a Learning Network, and we'll be signing off.